One of the things that absolutely breaks my heart is it's not just the right doing these tactics anymore. It's the left, it's progressives, it's my own side. It feels like we've gotten so far away from just telling a good story. It was done for the right intentions, but the execution of it came off very checklisty to me. I really, really wanted to love Discovery. But it feels like as that show went on, it just falls flat. It feels extremely pandering. Their non-binary character, Gray, was one of the worst trans characters in all of history. I felt nothing. We need to be thinking a lot bigger than this culture war than we tend to be stuck in, and we need to think about our values.
Hello and welcome to Culturescape, the show that interviews the geeks and weebs who built nerd culture. I'm your host, Pete Pischke, the fourth, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, most popular columnist at USA Today in the year of our Lord 2023. And today, we're going to take a trip down memory lane. This year, 2024, is the 10th anniversary of GamerGate, and Gigi, well, it ended up being about quite a lot of things, but the main bone of contention was ethics in games journalism. Now, how much this online movement could stick to that point is in contention. If you want to know more about that movement and my feelings on it, please watch this interview we have with Escapist founder Alex McCree. But I digress. In GamerGate, we first saw all the pitfalls we see today in the news, entertainment, and our political culture. Social media-led cancel culture pile-ons, politicized entertainment, a disconnect between communicators in the media and their audience, and a deep and personal loathing of anyone who might disagree. So today, we're going to talk to someone who was at the epicenter of that storm. Brianna Wu. Brianna is a former game developer, software engineer, and congressional candidate. She is also the executive director of Rebellion PAC, a progressive political action committee that she co-founded with Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. Brianna, of course, has experienced the very best and worst of social media activism, and she has a lot to say about the sad state of our culture and politics today, and what, if there is anything, might be done to change course. Welcome to the show, Brianna.
Thank you so much. You can call me Bree, by the way.
Okay, Bree works for me too. It's so interesting. I brought you on because, I mean, you've obviously always been in the periphery because you do very well on Twitter, social media, but you were talking about how you felt like your own side with progressive politics. I'm libertarian these days, but I come more from that right of center culture. You're more on the left of center culture. And you were saying, people have gone a little bit out of control. You're saying, well, let's, there are lots of good points here, but let's not go too far. We should, be responsible, control ourselves. I think the issue of Israel is one that you've spoken a lot about. And in response to that, you get all kinds of hate. And I've experienced that too. Even here on the show, we had Taylor Lorenz 2-3 weeks ago, which I thought was a very lovely conversation.
It was a fantastic interview. I watched it twice. It was one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. But the message I got was, Pete, we don't really care what she has to say because we're just not interested. I was like, is there anything she could do, anything she could possibly say whatsoever that would you be like, okay, I'll hear her out? And the answer for a lot of people was no, which is so interesting, but it's also kind of worrisome. So I wanted to bring you on and talk about all this and more.
So let's start at the top because, so from my point of view, GamerGate was the birth of a certain set of tactics that I think will feel very familiar to anyone who's been online anytime in the last, decade. It was basically mobs making the price of speaking your mind so high, it's easier to just remain silent. So you'd have teams of internet researchers go through, investigate every statement someone had ever made, and then they would turn around and basically attack you with it. They would try to get you fired. Sometimes they would send like mobs after you to harass you on social media. Also, frankly, death threats and rape threats to you. So, one of the things I said when I was trying to get law enforcement to take these tactics seriously, it was like, look, if you don't make there be a price for telling someone you're going to murder them, then these tactics are going to become normalized and they're going to pollute our political discourse. And 10 years later, that is exactly what has happened. And Peter, one of the things that absolutely breaks my heart is it's not just the right doing these tactics anymore. It's the left, it's progressives, it's my own side. I think anyone out there with a slightly different position than the most maximalist position on Israel right now is going to find themselves getting screamed at a lot. Just last night, a woman quit the voice acting industry because she was accused by progressives of being a quote unquote Zionist, right?
Hmm.
So it's been really, really disturbing to see my own side pick these tactics up.
I hear you. I think we could argue really who started, or we could like we keep going back in time. Someone keeps going
Can
back in time
we
to far further
can
point.
we go back in time?
That
Give me
that
an
would go
example
that could
of
go
the.
forever.
No, I'm really asking. Give me an example of the left doing these tactics first that was major.
I would say the tactics that we're starting to see in the early 2010s. From the people of GamerGate's perspective, I'm not GG, but from their perspective, they felt that people who are supposed to be news, they work in news, they're journalists, they're supposed to be representative, not of necessarily the industry they're working with, but representative of the readership. And then that they would see that activism and politics somehow became hand in hand with that job, and that bothered them. Of course, we have everything with Zoe Quinn and the Sarkeesian, yada, yada.
Sure.
Your fellows in the top 3 women that get brought up about GamerGate.
It's great. No, but my question is like, give me an example of a mainstream harassment attack that involved the left wing that predates Gamergate, because I don't think one exists.
I'd have to think on that. I'd have to think on that more. My brain is tired, so I wish I could be like, oh, but here it is. Ha! I got you. No, I just think it is worrisome. I am less interested, honestly, about saying who started what, because it just seems like a pointless argument. I'm more interested in where this is going and how we can tamp things down, because just this week we see everything with like libs of TikTok, Taylor Renz, and it's just like, it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. And you see people that are just so angry, and it's at such a fever pitch level.
Well, one of the things that's really changed my perspective on all of this is, look, what are the issues that got me involved in Gamergate in the first place, right? It was primarily the respect and dignity for women at work, and in a larger sense, women's rights. Peter, my honest question to you is: are women better off today with the tactics feminism is employing? Are our lives better? Has this resulted in better policies for us, this kind of brutal culture war? And, I think that Me Too did bring a large amount of awareness about the degree of sexual harassment that women were facing in a wide degree of industries. And I think that was a very, very good step forward. But I think it's also true that the policies to kind of address that have been completely lacking. So, what I've really been soul searching is, look, I've been on the front lines of this culture war. I've done my time. I've, fought for this using these tactics, trying to, basically be very loud on social media about what I want. Is this resulting in better policy? If there's an argument that answer is yes, I've never heard it. I think somewhere along the way, feminism became focused more on the superficial and kind of taking these very performative public stances. And we stopped really concerning ourselves with, well, women are not able to pursue careers the way that we would like because of, childcare issues or, employment discrimination. So I think that we're in a very, very high stakes culture war that's hurt everyone involved. That is not resulting in better policy for anyone, left or right.
I agree. It's something I've noticed, disability activism, that's actually more like my day job. Health reporting, one of the problems that's happened with the disability issue is organizations that would represent them, they've become kind of disinterested in actually getting anything done. There's like, we're all going to say certain things, we're all going to have all the right politics, but nothing actually will ever change. which is very frustrating because you know of specific issue like this needs fixed. We need someone to talk about this, and it doesn't happen. And it's very hard to make that conversation because it's like it's your own team, and they can't handle the idea that you might have a criticism or something negative to say. They're like, you're being disloyal. You see all those other people over there. They're terrible. You can't say these things. So they'll do something about it. But it's like, well, either way, it doesn't matter if they do something or not, nothing's changing. And I think that's so destructive because I feel like this apathy we have in our society, whether it's the pop culture or politics, I think it's leading to a lack of responsibility and just kind of letting things that are very important to be handled just kind of let go. And it's not healthy. I don't think it's gonna lead to positive outcomes. But you just like you said, I see this in conservative media all the time where you have these conversations like, okay, but what are we actually going to do? Like, I know thank you for the speech. That's very good. But what actually are we gonna do? Like action steps, please tell me. They don't have them.
I think that's dead on. The more and more I've done this, I realize social media is a trap. And if you're not talking about, concrete policy, you're not moving it forward. Like one of the things that really changed for me was running for Congress and, having a job where I'm executive director of a PAC, which, I got to tell you, the work of raising money to actually make an impact in elections, doing field work, which is what we call, canvassing, going door to door, producing ads, staying in compliance with FEC regulations. All of this is a lot harder than running a Twitter account. And, it is the way that you bring ideas and ideals into policy. And I think right now there's a severe imbalance in the number of people essentially taking, actions online to basically demonstrate for an audience what their values are and what the world is the way that they want it to be, and the political professionals out there that are actually doing the work. I think this is a really important distinction because I do think activists are very different than political professionals. I think increasingly, in the Gamergate days, we were talking about toxic activism. I think unfortunately today that problem is 10 times worse than it was. So I think you have activist spaces that are increasingly like cannibalistic and just exhausting to be around. I think on the other side, you have political professionals that are doing things like building voter lists, trying to, cut turf, trying to, do what we call GOTV, get out the vote. You have those people out there, they're doing this thankless work. I think the thing that we need to be stressing to people, no matter what you feel, you're almost always going to be more effective if you're over here in this political professional space doing the actual work of winning elections and promoting policy than essentially taking performative stances online.
I think that that's true of many things. And it's when you're talking to people, it's like, well, the thing is, with people, there's a lot of them. And a big group of people, they won't necessarily agree on very much. And so if you want to move forward on anything, whether you're at a job or whether it's a political movement, maybe you're putting together a comic book, you have to come to some agreement. So there's going to be compromises. They're going to be, you really will have to like, I hate that person. Stacy is the worst. Unfortunately, you're going to have to shut up and work with Stacy. And people just don't want to do that. I was talking with my mom the other day. We're on a dog walk, and she was saying this to me too. It just feels like something in the air, like responsibility has somehow evaporated. And it's hard to put up. It's like hard to take your finger and point on like, what happened? When did this switch flip? Maybe it was Gamergate. I don't know. But it definitely feels like we live in a very unserious time. Unfortunately, serious issues still keep on happening. Like as you were talking about frequently, the war in Israel and stuff going on in the Gaza.
I think it's so telling that when we started this, I had no idea what your political background was. And when you told me you were a libertarian, I was like, woo! Because I would a million times rather talk to someone right now that's respectful on the other side than someone on my own side, right? Just
Hmm.
because it just it's just it really feels like the progressive movement is going to a place. I think there was a moment in 2010 where we really had a lot of cultural power, and this argument for universal health care and more inclusion at work, I think it was very, very powerful. I want to be clear, like when it comes to certain public policies like universal health care, or looking at the way Black people are treated in American society and making structural, basically having structural policies to address that, I'm on board with that because I am a policy progressive. But I think increasingly, I wish I had a better way to say this, but progressives online behave exactly the way Gamergaters used to. And it's breaking my heart. I don't like calling my own side out, but I think if we don't step away from the brink and really take a look in the mirror right now, I think there's going to be no chance for us to have any relevance. And I want to be really clear with you about something, Peter.
Mhm.
Right now, we're having a power grab in the Democratic Party, right? No matter how you feel about Joe Biden, the Obama era of running the Democratic Party, of which Joe Biden is a part, that will end in 2024. It will be the last time he and that generation of thought have a voice in our party. After this, the knives are going to be out and they're competing visions. Is it going to be the liberal kind of, traditional economics, that kind of vision? Or is it going to be a progressive vision for the country that really does look at what women, people of color, LGBT people, like economic inequality, really focuses on that and tries to deliver for those people? And what is happening right now is because the way progressives are behaving is so, I don't know how to say it, it's so off-putting to the vast majority of people in our party. We are not going to have any seat at the table of where our party is going for the next decade or two. So I'm really encouraging my friends, back away from the brink. Your issues are dead correct. The way we are talking and fighting for these things is dead wrong. Let's step away from the brink and get serious.
It is hard to say that where you're like, you take your foot off the accelerator, please. If people are like, well, you're not really for this then. And I was like, no, I like, we're going in the right direction. I agree with you on that. We need to, slow down a bit. If there's a bump in the road, maybe a cliff, we don't careen off it. We have speed limits for a reason, but it's hard. Those are like adult things. Like
We're
adults have
just
to be
tolerate
responsible.
differences.
It's not even the acceleration, it's the tolerating of differences. Right now there's a attitude or a practice in progressive circles that if you disagree on one thing, you're completely excised. I'll give you a really good example. I think by the American electorate, I would be extremely, extremely pro-trans rights. I think adults should be able to transition. I think the healthcare, including FFS, should be paid for by the government. And I have no issues with minors transitioning if they meet some very, very, very high standards where a doctor is involved and really, really thinks critically about this, because the science is showing that non-binary people are getting caught up and doing a gender transition that's not going to serve them well in the long run, right? This is a extremely pro-trans point of view, but for a certain number of progressives, that's not pure enough, right? Like they want to say, okay, all minors should be able to transition DIY without a doctor involved, which is just insane to me. And a lot of parents, most of the electorate, and most medical professionals. We can't tolerate slight differences of opinion, even though we agree on 99% of what we should be shooting for on trans issues. We've got to stop the purity testing. We've got to learn how to work with people we disagree with.
100%. 100%. I think this is something I've learned just in like disability advocacy. Something that was happening during the corona was like a lot of people who, especially the chronic pain community, they felt like the momentum had stopped. And unfortunately, that meant that energy that would have gone to like the movement started heading inward. So they start eating their own. That's when you see things like purity tests. Oh, you're not for enough. Or did you hear what this person said about that person? And it's very destructive because it's like this doesn't serve anyone positively. and you try to explain to them, look, hear me out. What you want, what I want, this is what we agree on. We want things to get better. In this case, we want all patients to have medical freedom to be able to get whatever treatment they need as individuals. That is being, we are taking that, we're making it harder for it to happen because we're sniping at each other constantly. And so many people, well, you can't say that. You can't say that. Aren't you for the team? We're like, I am for the team. That's why I'm telling you, you stop it.
It's
Crazy.
dead on. It's dead on.
Crazy.
So what in your assessment is the central reason for this? Because I'm not quite convinced it's like a moral failure in progressives as much as, well, I think it's two things. I primarily think it's the social media algorithm, which rewards controversy, hot takes, conflict. And I also think that it's the fact that we've basically trained two generations of Americans now. We haven't taught them how real world politics works. I remember when I first started getting involved with DTCs, this is like local Democratic Party meetings here in Massachusetts. It was really unwelcoming. And, frankly, the age of everyone there was, was like I was young there and I'm in my 40s. So I think that we have really failed to shepherd younger people and kind of teach them how real world politics works.
That is very true. This is something that you and I have in common is we both embarrassed ourselves trying to run for a local office.
Maybe me
Which
a
is,
little bit. I don't think I embarrassed myself. I learned a lot of things doing that.
I think for me it was a net positive, but I mean, you do look,
Really?
some things I said or did, I cringe a little bit. I'm like, oof, I
What's
wish
an
I did that a
example
little
of that?
differently.
What's an example of that?
Oh, I don't know. I remember when I was at a debate one time, it was for the school board, and I thought for some reason that they weren't meeting at regular times. And I had this this great rant. And I said that, and then, no, actually they do. They meet every Tuesdays at 5. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? It was so painful. I think I was like 26. To be fair, I was younger and less wise. But
Well, I think for
it
me, I mean,
happens.
the big mistake I made was A, listening to Twitter and, forming most of my public policies I advocated for, and B, just not raising enough money. I mean, the reality is for a congressional seat, you need to raise 1.5 to $2 million. I wish I had basically put together a war chest before I started. So I'm not sure if I'll ever run for office again, but I don't regret it at all in the sense that, running for office taught me how NGP van works. It taught me how to raise money. It taught me about GOTV and cutting turf. And, there's just this set of skills that you can only learn by getting out there and doing it. And I would really encourage people like I've never made fun of someone for running for office and not winning. I think left or right, it's a tremendous act of courage. And I think the message I would send is win or lose, you're going to learn something very valuable from it and you're going to make some friends.
No, I agree. I think for me it was very valuable. It did teach me a lot. As someone that works in news, be on the other side of that, seeing how it feels to be on the other end of the pointy reporter stick. That was very useful. That actually has served me very well. And it gives you a sense of how hard it is, like how people come together with the terms and the policies and their planks. It's very important. Like you were saying, people don't seem to have a real understanding of how politics and the world actually works. And that's to their detriment because people then are coming with wrong expectations, or our expectations will never ever possibly be met, and that just leads us to so much detrimental stuff. Now I didn't. By the way, with that question, I didn't mean to make you feel bad or anything. I don't hold like I've said so many stupid things over the years. Like Moo Rocks is very funny, and
I had
know
a point,
that's.
but we'll get into that.
I can remember in middle school and high school, in the textbooks, one of the examples they would talk about is like, if you were in the Empire State Building and dropped a penny and, we could kill someone. I mean, I do remember that being a thing. So it's
Okay,
like,
so two of
I
the
kind of know your
greatest
thoughts
science
there.
fiction novels ever written, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and Nemesis Gains from the Expanse. Both of these are about basically rocks hitting the earth and talking a lot of great scientific detail about what would happen. And, for me, I think if you follow my Twitter, you'll see I'm, especially by democratic standards, I'm pretty damned hardcore on national security. And, the story I was reacting to were these efforts to basically privatize the moon. And the truth is, the moon is a place with an immense level of it's a very important ground for national security. Not only can you like jam communications, but if you have orbital bombardment weapons, like they are tremendously dangerous up there on the moon. I don't think we should privatize space. I don't support the militarization of space. And there's an adult discussion to be had about that. Of course, Twitter picked up on the stupidest thing possible and, ran with it, which is what Twitter does.
Well, it's funny. I mean, you are forever memorialized on the internet now. Congrats.
Thank you.
A lot of people actually will go to quite some lengths to get that, to oh, I'm on Urban Dictionary now.
I've had so many scandals at this point. I don't care. It's like there's a fake Brianna Wu who is a nerdy policy geek who is the second fastest Princess Peach speedrunner in the entire world. In a in a happy marriage in Massachusetts and collects Porsches who she restores. And then there's the villainous Brianna Wu that Twitter has constructed, and I can't do anything about that. So I just try to focus and on who I am.
No, that's a good attitude to have. Look, if you're going to be involved in media or public figure or politics, anything, I mean, this is just something you're gonna have to live with.
100%.
There's a lot you can do, but some of it's just always going to be outside your pants. Now, if you're smart like my buddy Vito and Dick over there, I mean, they are just masters. They're how can I put this? They're so Machiavellian because they use all that kind of stuff to great effect. I don't usually like drama. I'm not very good with that. But some people online, that's their thing. They're so good with it, and they can just cut through, and I don't know. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that talent.
I wouldn't say I like drama. I do really like speaking my mind. And the biggest factor for me in basically if I'm ever going to run for, Congress again, because now I do believe I could raise the amount of money that I would need to have a successful run. To me, the question is you really become a product more than a person, and you have to be so calculated in what you say all the time. I really place a high degree of importance on being able to speak my mind and engage these issues in a way that just feels true and authentic to me. So, I just it's just not something I could do. So there it is.
Definitely, and it's probably is going to be for some people. You're always going to be some kind of villain that they think of, and that's just it is what it is. One thing I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about this.
A lot of people love me too, I have to say.
No, you got followers. You have a pretty good following.
Yeah,
I think part of the problem with the culture war, even as a concept, is like real war. So World War II, right? There's winners, and then we the losers, and then we have accords, and we have war panels, and we judge people for war crimes, and there's like all these things that happen because that's because it's a real wars. They actually have this wind down, and like there are reparations and consequences. And culture wars will have none of that. That's kind of I wonder how much this is part of the problem, because it's like Brianna Wu, as much as you may blame her for her role in GamerGate and all the terrible things she's ever done, there's never going to be a culture war tribunal. Like we have summoned you, Brianna. You are to go and do your time. I don't know what you sense to.
Yeah.
This is how I feel. Okay, I'm speaking for myself now. My goal has always been, I just want the culture to be in a healthy place where we can enjoy the culture, art. We could talk to people of different persuasions. It's a healthy, happy, nice place. That's what I like. I think prior to the 2010s, I go to anime convention. I go to a Doctor Who forum. I have a random D&D or Magic night. I can sit down with anyone, any political persuasion, ethnicity, whatever. Doesn't come up. Nobody cares. That's kind of in my mind, like the ideal I want to go back to. I think the problem is for a lot of people, though, is that they will not be happy until tell people, like Taylor Renz, like yourself, are somehow this doesn't even make sense, but put in clatters somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I am the Pennywise to a whole bunch of people out there, right? And it's on the right and the left. I have to say, the way Taylor is treated is just so disturbing to me. It really, really bothers me. I mean, this is a woman that literally invented an entire type of beat that the traditional media was completely ignoring.
Mhm.
After she did this, there are a lot of people that are, copying her beat, to varying degrees of success. But, she's going to be in the journalism textbooks because of that. I think if you look at her interview a few days with go with Libs of TikTok, yeah, I think there was a really asymmetric level of preparation that went into that. Like she's a professional journalist and it showed. Yeah, every time I've worked with Taylor, I have been just blown away by the level of professionalism that she brings and the level of research that she brings. And it's really weird to see them turn someone who's just a deadly competent journalist into this crying extremist on coronavirus figure that is just unreasonable when it's just not true. It's completely false.
There seems to be, oh, people are going to hate me so much for this episode. It seems to be that it's like people don't want to hear that their caricature of someone isn't true. That's kind of what it feels like to me. Like actually, because I've talked to Taylor. I'm somewhat friendly with her. I know more of her background and some of the stuff. Even in the interview, there were things like she's like, don't put this here, don't say that, because she doesn't want people stalking her. And it's like, okay, fine. And part of me feels like I wish more people would know about that. Know more about the health issues you don't want to talk about. Know more about what you and your family have been through, because I think if people heard that, maybe they'll be more understanding. But she could be right. She could be right, and that
She's right.
like it doesn't matter how much information they're given or how 3D
It will just
people
be
don't want
used
to do
to
it.
Attack her, basically. So this is the reality of being a public figure. And look, to be clear, this is not limited to Taylor or I. Just before doing this today, I was on Lauren Chen's show. I think she's gotten this to some degree. Lauren Southern, again, I disagree with her on many things, but we're friendly with each other. She's gotten turned into a caricature of who she actually is by a lot of people on the right and the left as well. So I think this is just it's something consistently happens, especially to women public figures. And it's just the price of having a career, as far as I can tell.
There is a gender asymmetry to it. There
I
is.
agree.
Women do get hit with it harder, often by other women. I don't know why that is, but it is true. It's really, it's just, I don't know. It's just sad. I think of my good friend Vito, who I mentioned earlier, and it's like he's outside now of the sort of right wing nerdy click on YouTube, and it's like to some people this is like the biggest issue in the world, and they say the worst things about it, and it's none of it matters. Like everyone's acting, they're having a freak out, but none of it actually matters at all. And it's hard because you're like, it's bad that we treat people this way, but it's even worse that we actually believe like these little cliquish things we do that they actually mean anything or they lead to anything. I don't
rather
know.
than just admiring the problem, what are the solutions? Because if you're more
That's
libertarian, I don't think you're going to like mine. I think we're long past the point where we need to look at regulating social media algorithms, right? I'm old enough to remember when Facebook was a neutral news algorithm of what your friends were up to, right? Their page, and as they posted things in order, you got it. We have a lot of science now about what this algorithm is doing to us. It's making us more extreme. It's making us unhappy. It's damaging particularly teenage girls. I understand there's a lot of correct hesitation, particularly given the extreme age of Congress, about their ability to regulate this. But
Oh, there is nothing funnier on earth than watching them grill someone from Google.
Yes. And I understand that, but
I think that these algorithms they're subjecting us to, I think there's a really good argument that that should be open source, where I should be able to look at that code and you should be able to look at that code. I think we should really be able to understand, and even if we don't want to regulate it, I think there should be full disclosure about what those algorithms are.
I guess from my perspective, the problem is you worry about if you're just going to be trading one master for another, is it actually going to be, because regulation is often a coin flip. Will this actually help or will it entrench the problem? That would be, I say, my biggest concern. Not that I don't disagree that is a problem. I think it's been highly destructive. I think what's happened to news shows the dark side of it, that we kind of are living in an attention engine. And at limited quantities, that's fine. When it has become all-consuming, which it is now, that leads to terrible, terrible outcomes. I mean, is it a situation where we do like a place like New Zealand? Are we going to now starting to fund news? Are we going to be doing things where we're going to try to provide, Switzerland, Sweden, where they have tiny little programs that lets the local liberal arts guy, he basically gets paid to be weird. And like we're in a weird art project, but he doesn't cause any problems. I don't know necessarily what the good solution is. My worry is it going to be so much worse and then we're not going to be able to unturn it. But, people have said this about libertarians before, that they're fine at pointing out problems. They're not very good at thinking of solutions, which I'm often guilty of.
Well, look at it this way. So let's look at your own publication. And I hope it's okay to say this, but
Yeah, go for it.
in 2022, you had a reporter on staff that basically had fabricated a whole bunch of sources, right? You looked into that. Anyone from the public could look at that. They could check out those sources. They could see who the editor was in charge with that, who the managing editor was, and they could do that. And USA Today came forward. You explained what you were going to do. You took down those articles. You were very transparent. The American people were able to look at the journalistic process there and kind of make their own conclusion about your credibility. And to be clear, I like your paper. I think that there is a complete lack of accountability in a similar way for what Facebook, Google, and these other, Twitter, what these algorithms are showing us. I think they're doing the public's business, deciding what stories are getting our attention, and I think there needs to be more disclosure about that.
It is a problem. I think what I've been seeing, especially on the right, is very concerning as of late, because it feels like people are being pulled by the ear and they don't quite realize it. And it's like attention's fine to a point, but when they're bringing you to attention things that aren't actually real issues, or it leads to a hate mob, or it leads to, this is kind of where I'm with Taylor Lorenz, at least for this week, completely on libs of TikTok being a very negative presence. And it's I kind of agreed with her kind of at the beginning, where it's like, here are some issues of major problems, say in public education. And it's like, that's fine. That's to a point. But now we're at a point where it lives a TikTok. It's like, here's someone that sent a mean message on Fiverr. And I'm like, I know you didn't read that. I know you had one of your assistants go and look into the spam folder. Okay, where's a good death threat I can think? Oh, there it is. And then you put that up on Twitter. This is nobody's business but your own. I mean, that could have been anyone. I mean, that literally could have been anyone. Why is it our problem? But then it's like, well, this is obviously a problem. It's obviously a death threat. Like, look, death threats are bad. You need to understand. Everyone gets these. Everyone gets the message says, oh, I hope you die. I hope you die sad and alone. But we don't, then it's not actionable. You can't do anything about it. And it's like talking.
I do think that libs of TikTok, and I want to be really clear. I think that she is in many ways responsible for the stochastic terrorism that we're seeing. I think that she has a certain amount of culpability for the non-binary student that died a few days ago. And one of the things that's changed about the way I use my platform is you don't see me as often going after very small figures. Because I do think if you have a large profile, you have to be very conscientious about who can get hurt based on what you say and how you use it. At the same time, I think there's a wider problem with the left that we become really, really used to winning or trying to win arguments by using this highly moralized language and daring anyone to disagree with us. And I think this is why Libs of TikTok has been very, very effective. That kind of, showing some clips, particularly in school, that I think it's something that we need to have a discussion about as a society. The last time I was on Tim Pool, I thought it was really telling because there was a previous liberal guest that was on the show, and Tim Pool dared this person to justify a book that was in a children's library with a whole bunch of extremely explicit pornographic images in it. And this person was like, I'm fine with that. And I have no problem saying no. Parents
Mhm.
do have a right to put the kibosh on that. We should be having a discussion about that. I welcome that. And I think that one of the things that makes Libs of TikTok unfortunately successful is she's trying to have a conversation that, to be clear, I disagree with in the aggregate, the conversation that the left is not willing to have with her. I don't think that's a way to get people on your side. I think that on the left, we need to get comfortable again with being able to defend our positions. There are excellent arguments for having sex ed in schools. There are excellent arguments for talking about normalizing, LGBT kids in schools, and we should make those arguments. But just defaulting to this moralized language with everything, where everyone with a different opinion is a monster, it's just not a way to get the public policy that we want.
No, no, it's not wise. It's not helpful. It's not true. It just isn't true. We focus a lot here on news and political culture. What about like the pop culture, nerd culture? You mentioned how much you enjoyed Ring the Expanse, which, by the way, fabulous books,
Yes.
great TV show. That makes sense actually when you say that because there are weaponized rocks in the Expanse. It does
Yes.
happen. How do we like fix things there? You like the stuff we see with Doctor Who. It's like it feels like two people are tearing it into like, okay, so if we ease it out on either side, one side's going to be offended. And for me, I'm just like, I just want good Doctor Who. Doctor Who is always it's kind of you're going to get all kinds of people work on it, and that is fine. But I don't. How do we undo that? How do we de-ratchet it down? So let's stop pulling it so much apart. Let's just calm things down, kind of go back to sort of for everybody again. Do you have any thoughts about how that might be done or if that's even a realistic expectation?
No, I think it should be done. Stephen King has an excellent quote from back in the 80s, if you can believe it, about why his stories don't contain a lot of politics, right? And he's like, look, politics change, a good story never changes. And I think that's exactly right. Yeah, to be fair, something I think the right is doing is they are politicizing women, LGBT people, people of color existing in media, where it's not political. They're just there existing. I think on the left, though, there is this increasing sense that you have to go through a checklist and it feels more performative. It's a really hard thing to put like your finger on, but this is the best example I have of this. The Marvels. I didn't love the first Marvel's movie, Captain Marvel movie, but it was okay. And what they need to do is come back on that sequel, double down on the character, tell her backstory, focus in on her character arc, and give her something to do emotionally. What they did instead was turn it into what I thought was a bunch of sexist cliches about what women must want in movies, and then weaken the protagonist into three protagonists, which felt very, checklisty from my point of view. right? Give me a story with any one of those women, but don't make the women's movie like multi-ethnic, multicultural, like space adventure with singing. And, it feels like we've gotten so far away from just telling a good story. When I think about the most powerful women in pop culture ever, it's Sigourney Weaver, it's Linda Hamilton, right? So I think we have to go back, we have to let women be flawed, and we have to be willing, we have to put like diversity can be a spice of a meal, but diversity itself is not a meal, right? It's got to be more. And I think that's the reason a lot of this entertainment, despite being more diverse, is not really landing with people.
At the same token, by the way, thanks for not commenting. Oh, my dogs were barking. I appreciate that.
Yes, I have dogs.
Uh,
I get it.
uh, I at the same token, I feel like when it comes to wokeness, I think people need to ratchet down their censors some because we need to stop, jumping at everything's throat immediately, trying to look for the littlest thing. Because I think, especially where people are today, you are probably going to have some amount of it, but then you have to make the conversation like, how much does it really impact? Does it fit the theme's ideas? You can have left-wing political themes ideas if it makes sense in the story and the themes. That's fine. That's a hard conversation to have, but I do think that is also part of the equation.
How could you not? You can't tell the story. Like take The Expanse, which I think is the finest literary work to come out in my lifetime, point blank. The best work. You've got really deep themes there about the cost of imperialism, right? You've got really deep like themes there about the cost of terrorism and the cycle of violence. Like there's no way to tell that story and not have it have a left-wing bent. So, I think it's whoever serves the story. When I watch something like Starship Troopers or read Robert A. Heinlein, who is one of my favorite authors, there's a very strong right-wing bent to it. That is part of why it's so successful, right? That point of view makes it very entertaining. That's why these are philosophical books as much as they're adventure stories. So I fully reject the idea that politics needs to be divorced from entertainment. I don't think you get complex themes without it. I just think you have to do it in a way that is meaningful and a way that touches into the story, if that makes sense.
No, that makes fair sense.
I want to ask you, when you say
it.
woke, what do you mean by woke? Because I hear this used as a pejorative all the time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is. It doesn't mean much anymore. I would say something that has been twisted and changed as some kind of political vehicle. That you have taken something and you've transformed it to be a message for something else that wasn't originally. But it's also there's a bit of adult content. You know it when you see it about the issue. If I was being completely honest, there's some things that are like that just seems very woke. Seems very wokish. A lot of wokery going on here.
It seems to me that often the people claiming wokeness come from a very specific background. And I don't think that's accidental, right? Like I would call Captain Marvel like the Marvels bad storytelling. I would call it like prioritizing the wrong things, but I wouldn't call it woke, if that makes sense.
I would say Captain Marvel is not necessarily woke because there's a clear intention, and for all intents and purposes, it's their original character. I would say the Disney Plus show Captain America and Winter Soldier, which then is it's Captain Falcon and the Change of Captain
Winter Soldier. That was excellent.
That does have moments though where it's like it kind of gets bent in half for politics. I would say that would be something that I would put in the woke category.
Give me an example of that.
It gets into. I try not to get too much into politics. I feel like we've already crossed that Rubicon though. It gets very much into racial politics, and it kind of moves the characters in such a way that the character of the Winter Soldier is kind of always having to be the bad guy and always say yes, and he just kind of goes along with it. And there's this whole thing. The whole thing stops in the final episode, so the new Captain America can give a very long speech, but none of it makes any sense because his partner's been there the entire time, and he literally World War II Nazis, which are like the most racist people to ever have been racist. And
What speech are you talking
it
about
just
when he was trying to pick up when he was talking to the first the first black person that had the super soldier serum and asking if he could become Captain America? Are you talking about that?
no, I'm talking about it might be the final episode where like everyone stops and then the Falcon, now Captain America, takes everyone aside and he gives like a 5 to 10 minute long speech.
But
So
I found that to be very meaningful, even as a white person, because it just, I thought he was saying stuff that rang true with what I saw growing up in Mississippi. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just I got the woke mind virus going on, but I thought that was
perhaps
actually really good.
that's fine. We can agree to disagree. That's fine. I mean, there are things I like that most people think are terrible, but that's okay. No
Fair
one's
enough.
perfect.
I guess it's like, I think like when I use a word like terrorism on Twitter, I try to be very cognizant of it because it just feels like there are a whole lot of words out there like terrorism, ethno state, woke,
Mhm.
they're these very, censorship. They're these very amorphous political words that are really used to shut down conversations more than elucidate any meaning. And I think that's my really big objection to like the concept of woke. It's not that I don't think we should have it's not that I don't think white dudes should be able to have a conversation about one point I've always felt is fair is how in video games, I've killed probably millions of male soldiers and very, very few like female soldiers, right? Why do we code male life as disposable and, you know, not treat women the same way? I think that's a legitimate point. I just think like woke it's just such an amorphous complaint. It's not just loaded. I don't know what to do with that, right? You're not going to get good art if you're trying to shut down what an artist is trying to say.
Yeah, that does kind of make it why it's hard for that to change entertainment because you're telling basically the people who are the artists to not be artsy, which is like
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to say. It's I don't know. I feel like Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is like kind of my big go-to. I just love it. I think I've read every novel adaptation, every episode novel adaptation there is. I used to collect them all. I have most of them. Big Finish entries. Big. I just love Doctor Who. I think it's so fascinating. And they're
You must
like,
be really disappointed with what's happened to it in recent years
yes,
then. Yeah.
yes, extremely so. And to me, it's like there could be lots of leftish, left wing, lots of kind of different ideas, but Doctor Who is a specific thing, and it came from. It's not dissimilar to Star Trek in the sense that it was from the '60s, and so it's somewhere between progressive and a classic liberal perspective of things. And above all, though, it was just a very kind show, and it was like, here's how history is interesting. Let's go fight the mean aliens. The Doctor is a wonderful character because he, she, whatever. Believes in the best of even their enemies, and I'm just like, I love that stuff. It's great, and they're so well written. There's a wonderful history that ties classic science fiction with Doctor Who. All that is fantastic, and it's really hard when you see it's now become like this weird political vehicle. I think that when I got really frustrated, not that I've talked much about this, they were going to do this is kind of like we're getting near COVID time. And they were going to they had a story that they were going to cover H.P. Lovecraft. And so then they give the sixth Doctor, who's widely considered the kindest of the doctors. He's the nice one. And they basically have him chew out H.P. Lovecraft, like, oh, you terrible person, you racist, you monster, you bigot, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, that's just, that isn't the Doctor. That isn't what the Doctor would do. That just isn't him. And it's sad because it's like, this is something that was really awesome and it didn't need to change. But that's a harder conversation to have than just saying, well, this is woke. Look at Ray. She said some mean things. She said some mean things about white people. And it's like, well, it's more than it's.
I think
Hard
this is actually a
conversations.
really good example of where you and I have a very similar I think we have a similar frustration, but I think we're getting there from different ways because yeah, I really I'm not, to be clear, I'm not as big a Doctor Who fan as you, but I really, with the relaunch, I really like Billie Piper's character as one of the Doctor's companions. And when you get to Karen Gillian, how do you say her name? Is that it? Gillian?
Close
Uh
enough.
yeah,
She's Scottish.
the gorgeous redhead, right?
Yeah.
I was consistently really pissed off watching that and the way they treated her, which I do think was primarily as a sex object. I don't think they gave her her own arc or treated her like a person. And then, you eventually get to the female Doctor Who. And this is something I'd really wanted for a really long time, right? Let women have adventures in this universe and not kind of be like the companions at their best are equals, but I don't think they always are the equals. And, the way they treat the show then is really felt to me like a diversity checklist where they don't believe in the female doctor enough to leave her as the strong central character. They kind of turn it into a three-character show where all three of them are having their own adventures and really de-emphasizing the doctor as a character at a really at the same point where none of them could carry the show and none of them have a really strong point of view. So, I think that would have been a billion times better. Like, have a female doctor, but give her her own agency. Like, get someone like Billie Piper to play her, right? I just think I think it was a real misstep. I think it was done for the right intentions, but the execution of it came off very checklisty to me.
I agree. It did feel like it made it hard to root for Jodie Whittaker because it felt like the own showrunners didn't seem to really care what was happening all that much.
I
It
agree.
was like, even if necessarily I'm not a huge fan of casting, it's like, the actor, whatever, can only do so much with what they're given. And it was, even with this new reboot, they just brought David Tennant back. And it's just, I don't know. It's not, it doesn't feel like people are totally giving their A game.
So I
That's
think it
just me.
really, as long as we're talking geek culture, I think like looking at Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Strange New Worlds is very, very, very illustrative, right? And there are some people on the show that follow me on Twitter. I apologize. I wanted to like your show. When your show debuted, we actually had a fundraiser with the first episode of Discovery because like I thought it was a moment where we really needed to believe in a positive vision for something for the future. And I really, really wanted to love Discovery. But it feels like as that show went on, you have the gay romance between Stamets, right, and Ricky from My So-Called Life. And it just falls flat. It feels extremely pandering. We're supposed to be like in wonder about Michael Burnham's like internal changes as she's like learning to become a leader, but she never pays a price for this, and everyone just kind of freely breaks every rule all the way as they're doing it. Their non-binary character, Gray, was one of the worst trans characters in all of history. They treated this person as disposable, and it was just completely. I felt nothing watching it. Right? You compare that to Strange New Worlds, which is an adult show about adults doing their damn job. And I bet if I added it up, there are just as many women in that cast, but they are there to the inclusion, the diversity is just a spice of what makes that cast different. Their characters, their internal conflicts, what they want, their flaws, that's all front and center. So I think if there's any illustration of like how a science fiction property should do this right, look at Strange New Worlds. I like follow the original formula, figure out what made that more magical, and hire different people to tell that same kind of story better. Don't make the diversity the focus and ask the audience to feel something when you haven't done the work of writing it.
I agree. Uh, Discovery is terrible.
It's so bad. Oh,
It is. It's pretty bad. Orville is another good example because there are lots of little bits of progressive messaging, but they all serve the greater whole. Like there's a show here. There are things we want to do. It's not just, let's stop the show at to have a political lecture. And it's just not very, like, and you take away the very online people just to like someone that isn't very political and they're not on Twitter all the time. They may not care too much about the politics. They just want a good show. Like,
Yeah.
left, right, they could really care. And it's that area most of all, which seems to be failing. It's like the politics are
Star
almost
Trek
like
has
covered
always
for it.
been political. Star Trek's the most political show in like science fiction history. Star Trek is a trillion times more political than Star Wars. That's what makes it good.
Yeah, and it's political in a very certain way. It was very much, especially at the beginning, was very much the worldview of the people of the '60s, and
Yeah.
it is what it is. You take some, if you take all the politics out of it, it's no longer Star Trek. But if you smother it in it, then you get Discovery. Is there any, I do have just a few questions left to ask you. Is there anything in the world of culture that you are looking forward to? Is there anything you're like, are you playing games? Are you looking, you were our game developer. Are you excited about any games that are coming up?
Oh my God, thank you for asking. So I love Princess Peach. I love Princess Peach. Princess Peach is my girl. I am obsessed with Super Mario 2. I'm one of the top speedrunners in the entire world with it. And the only game to ever come out that stars Princess Peach previous to what's about to happen is Super Princess Peach, which is a terrible Nintendo DS game that I do not recommend at all. It is pandering. It's bad. Princess Peach uses her emotions to try to unlock puzzles as you're doing it. Absolutely terrible. Stay away. But there's a new game that's about to come out called Princess Peach Showtime on Switch. It looks very, very speedrunnable. And as one of the top speedrunners in the world, I specialize in games with female characters. I am really, really looking forward to this one.
Speedrunning is an interesting hobby. It is a lot of dedication, like
It's
more
really not.
dedication than I have.
It's just, your turbo autism kicks in and you just can't stop playing something. So, like everyone hated Resident Evil 3 remake. I love it. I can beat that game in 52 minutes, which is crazy. I love speedrunning. It's just you become obsessed with something and the subtleties of the technique. It's just amazing. I love it.
I think it's very neat. I love to see the end result. I just don't. I'm not one of those people that watches like the Twitch streamer that has like years and they just play the one game, just the one game, and have like a randomizer. Some of these people actually do very well on Twitch, and I don't get it. I can't do it. I just get too bored. That's the ADHD speaking. So kudos to you for doing it. That's a cool hobby, but not something
I
I
could
don't.
talk to you about the 3 frame window for vine jumps all day long in Super Mario Brothers 2.
Well, this has been fun, Brianna. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. A little bit more serious. I mean, do you have any regrets? I could start this. I definitely have regrets for some of the things I might have said, done, written. Depends on the piece. I don't think I have like tons and tons, but there are things I wish I'd said a little differently. I didn't lean so much into the wokeness, though headlines often were totally outside my control. When what ends up being published is kind of it's different than what you put in. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, there are things I wish I'd done better. I'd been a bit more mature.
Yeah.
You don't have to cite any specific example. I'm not trying to
Oh,
embarrass anyone.
I can give you specific examples. One of the things I really regret is, I had a clinical case of trauma from GamerGate. My therapist, her name was Madeline Pluhar, and she did a fantastic job helping me come back from something that was literally destroying my life. And to be clear, I was getting hundreds of explicit death threats a day. I would wake up in the morning, I'd have my address posted, I've had a picture of my dog, and someone would tell me that they were waiting outside my house with the power drill to stick it into my neck. I had people become obsessed with me, writing fan fiction about flaying the skin off my body, boiling me to death, and how they were going to force me to eat limb by limb, like cannibalizing myself as they were murdering me.
Very descriptive. Also
it
gross.
sticks with you.
It really sticks with you. I had a clinical case of trauma from Gamergate. And what I really regret more than anything was not logging off and kind of dealing with that trauma sooner. It hurt my marriage. It hurt my game studio. It hurt my friendships. It hurt people I cared about a lot, like Amanda Warner. And, I think a side effect of that is I added to some of the stereotypes about what, so-called SJWs can be. So I really, really regret that. I regret letting the fringes bully me into taking positions that I secretly didn't think made sense, but that I was scared to speak out against because of progressivism. I give Destiny and his community a lot of credit. Destiny has been going up against the extreme. He is a progressive in many ways, but he's been really showing how much of a paper tiger the extremes are. And I feel like he really gave me permission to do the same. So those are really my regrets, not getting help sooner and letting people push me into extremist beliefs that I wasn't really sure I believed in. I will never do that again.
That is, I mean, that's just kind of part of life. You hopefully you learn, and from that you mature and you try to make better decisions than you used to. I feel like I wish I had not leaned so much into outrage culture. I wish I had. I feel like I felt like when I was doing certain things, like I do a pop culture piece, I'm talking about, there's the new Marvel movie, there's the new Disney whatever woke thing. I had assumed that my readership and people understood, that this was a problem of, not the entire descriptive. Like that's all this thing is. It's only woke. There's nothing else. And that was my cardinal mistake. I was thinking that people wouldn't take this to the most extreme, either the readers or the people who you're trying to make mad so that you get lots of clicks. And that was my mistake. But there's nothing you can do. You can't turn back time. You can only try to be better. It's like when I embarrassed myself at the school board debate. It's like, well, that happened.
But I think it's so telling. I think it's so telling that so many of the people involved with Gamergate kind of regret that we let it push us this far. I mean, I'm not going to betray private conversations, but I I could, and I hope your viewers will just take my word for this. I could name you 5, 6, 7 big names, like people that that I've had private conversations about that have regrets about Gamergate very similar to yours. And I just think this is so instructive that, like, we are the veterans of the culture war. We have a decade of experience here. You and I are giving people the exact same message. This is not going to result in better policy, and it's going to take a big toll on you, right? I really hope people will listen to that and, find a better way to advocate for the things they care about.
Yeah, heavens knows what that actually ends up being, but I agree. Please be responsible and be your best selves. Don't just fall into this. It's so tempting because and we talked about Taylor Lorenz. This is I think where her regrets are too. It's like people think with all the pieces, like Taylor's, attacking whatever person she's picking on today. They don't understand, like, you're working at the outlet and they want you to do that. They're like, please go make people mad, get them to read our stuff. And it's like, you are part of this machine of negativity. And so in the context of the time, it felt like it was okay to do, because like, this is what everyone does. This is many people still do. But at the end, I'm thinking, like, did my readers, did I make their lives better? Did it help the culture as a whole? Do I feel like this was positive, or was I someone that was just making it, I was just polluting the river with everyone else? And that's where I come to it. I try to tell people who are trying to, I did mentor someone over the last year who are interested in trying their hands at media or conservative media, which I have some experience in. And that, that's kind of the counsel I give them too. It's like, just don't let yourself get dragged into all this, because it feels more real at the time than it actually is, and you just won't be very happy with yourself.
So I have to ask you, as somebody that kind of did follow Gamergate and participated in it to a certain extent. Like, how do you perceive me today, or has this changed your mind about me at all?
I would say, I would say, so from I would say it's very different. I would say from like 2017, and Moon Rocks. I appreciate what you've been doing. That's why I first was trying to ask you on the show, because I see like you do a lot of discussions of like Dev, Short Fat Otaku, talk about Destiny. I see you're trying to have these conversations with the other side, or try to find places of mutual agreement. You're trying to counsel people to like be a little better. And I sincerely respect that a lot, because I think that is what needs to happen. I think that's the adult, mature, good thing that needs to happen. And I appreciate it. And knowing my own history with media and knowing different people that worked in it, I just like, some of this is just people playing the game, and some of it you just have to let go. That doesn't mean necessarily everything that Brianna Wu has ever done I agreed with, that thought was good, or thought was right, or I think that, we can all disagree with each other as much as what, but I'm going to be trying to be friendly with her because I respect what she is doing. And I think she's trying to be a positive influence, and I respect that. I think that's good. More people should do it.
Ultimately, I love our country, and I see democracy is falling all around the world. I think that there are real discussions to be had, like as the Middle East continues to destabilize. Many of these countries want to create, basically a theocratic state, and it is just objectively factual that that is going to impact democracies in Europe, right? I think that as autocracy is on the rise with strongmen like Putin, I think this is a really good time for us to be thinking about what our values are. I do believe in democracy, and part of the reason I talk about feminism so much less today than I did a decade ago isn't because I have less of a commitment to women's lives. I actually think women get a really unfair shake in America. But I think that part of democracy is finding a way to live with each other and working with people you disagree with. You can't just demonize everybody as evil, or, this or that. You've actually got to like win at the ballot box, and we're not going to get half the country to stop existing. So I don't know. I think if you're really thinking about what is the organizing principle for the American economy for the next century, we need to be thinking a lot bigger than this culture war than we tend to be stuck in, and we need to think about our values.
I hear more and more, and you were mentioning it, like you get DMs or you get messages from people who are culture warriors and they have regrets. I get that too. And I was talking to a very well-to-do YouTuber who've been very successful, and they kind of feel like there is a shelf life on this kind of outrage thing that's been going on. And I want to believe that's true. I want to believe people are sick of it, and there will be a flip. People be like, let's just not keep doing that.
I'm going to DM you after the show, because I bet I know who you're talking about.
I want that to be true.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Brianna, thank you so much for taking the time to show today. It was an interesting episode. You are definitely an interesting person. No matter if they like you or not, they can always at least say that, which is positive in its own way. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we get done here?
Vote in 2024. If you believe in democracy, go make your voice heard. Put aside your cynicism, participate in the process. Don't forget, as flawed as our democracy is, they would kill to have something that flawed in Russia. Get out there, make your voice heard.
Yes, our supermarkets are very nice too. I don't know why Tucker says Russia has all the best supermarkets. That just is not true. I was at a supermarket today, and I'd have to put a single coin to get my cart.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
All right, I'm going to go cook dinner. It's been great talking to you.
All right, you take care, Brianna. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. If you like listening to Brianna, she is an interesting person. I mean, you may not like her, you may not love her, but I think we can all agree she is interesting. So if you want to hear more from Brianna, learn more about her, you can find her on YouTube, Twitter, Reddit. On Twitter, she's at Brianna Wu. That's 2 N's. I like her. You know, I disagree with her a ton, but I appreciate her efforts to have honest conversations, you know, to find the meeting ground, places of agreement. That's important. Thank you to the supporters, everyone that helps put the show forward, especially to these 2 organizations, Bain Books Publishing and imprint of Simon & Schuster. They help connect us with the book authors, some of the comic book artists, very meaty, nerdy, geeky people that otherwise are kind of hard to get. So that help is super appreciated. Thank you so much for that. And of course, Young Voices, a journalism advocacy organization. They train young journalists how to be better at the job, more ethical, more responsible, more on the ball. That is awesome. We need more of that. So thank you so much for your support. And of course, to all my viewers like you, I love all the feedback, the hot takes of the show. Whether you hate our guests or you love our guests, whether you think we can do better or we're perfect, I want to hear it all. Negative comments, negative feedback is welcome. You know, that too you can learn from. So please continue to communicate with us. Let us know what we can do to make the show better for you. And so I guess we'll end it here. Until next time, friends, one and all, please keep geeking out.